Hey, beautiful people, welcome back to another episode of LifeWithLumii podcast. Every time I say that, I smile. Welcome back. I am Lumii, your host, and it's always my delight and my pleasure to have you listen to me on this space where life gets better just by hearing this voice. I don't know how it happens, but it just works. So welcome to another exciting episode, and I hope we are leveling up. If you know, you know. So we started this year on a high spirit, and we agreed that we are going to level up this year by force, by fire. So if this is your first time here, kindly join the movement using the hashtag LevelUp2024. And of course, we are so glad to have you. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for joining us. Now, in the spirit of leveling up, I've come up with a chant, or would I call it a mantra? And I'm sure you already know what it is from the title. Yes, the message is simple, and it is: Imposter Syndrome will not end us. Can I hear you? Imposter Syndrome will not end us. Yes, my dear, you heard it right. This thing called Imposter Syndrome will not end us. Can I hear your amen? Amen. Of course, I'm speaking to myself as well, because personally, I know that there is this thing called Imposter Syndrome, but I never really understood how it had badly affected me, or I never really understood what the concept was about, right? I just had like a little bit of knowledge of it, right? So if you're like me, please be my guest. Take the front row, grab some snack, and of course, listen attentively, and let's dive right in. I think I should start off by sharing my story. So, sometime last year, I got a gig, and we were required to take up, a test to qualify, right? And truthfully, I prepared myself, guys. I studied for this thing, just how you would read for your exams in order to get excellent grades, right? Yes, I did that. So now I got it, thanks to God. Now it was time for myself and the rest of the team to get on the gig and do the actual work, and then the problem starts. So even as much as I was praised and congratulated for the success, I didn't take it out, as I just felt like it was just one random thing I've gotten my hands on, right? And of course, there is the grace of God. I mean, as a Christian girl, I put no confidence in the flesh. But taking it back to when I met with the rest of the team and I started doing the job, right? I remember that I would always panic, guys. I would always panic, and I was always feeling anxious or stressed about making mistakes or not meeting expectations. I was equally overwhelmed by responsibilities. At some point, I was also feeling like I wasn't as smart as the rest of the team, and I would mostly shy away from contributing actively to any project that was on ground, right? It was that bad, my dear. And it's funny how I've noticed similar patterns in, my life, and I got tired as to why I always feel this way. Now, let me take a break from sharing my story to explain what imposter syndrome really is. Let me give you an example. Now, imagine you're at a conference, or let's say a party, with a bunch of really cool, smart, or talented people, right? But then you start feeling like you do not belong there, like you're not as smart or talented as everyone else, even though you might actually be just as good as them, right? But then you just can't seem to shake off the feeling that you feel that you're somehow like a fraud, or that you've tricked everyone into believing that you belong there. Yes, that feeling is what we call imposter syndrome. Another scenario would be that, think of probably when you get a job or you join a new group, and then you start feeling like you're not qualified enough, and you worry that they would figure out that you are not as skilled or capable as they think that you are, even though you have worked hard and you have achieved that success. But you still doubt yourself, and you attribute the accomplishment to luck or chance rather than your own abilities. That is also what imposter syndrome means, right? It is when you doubt your own abilities and you feel like you don't deserve the success or praise that you have achieved. And it is common, especially when you're trying something new or you're stepping out of your comfort zone. It's even funny because you might not be aware that you're struggling with imposter syndrome. You might just tell yourself or believe that you are not just qualified enough, and you decide not to even push for things that you want to do, which is not healthy. Honestly, I still struggle with this, but I'm getting better because now I've recognized it and I'm ready to tackle it, which is why I said imposter syndrome will not end us. All right, we no go grieve for imposter syndrome. Not in 2024, not ever. Okay, so here is how you know you're struggling with imposter syndrome. So firstly, I would say that when you constantly question your abilities and you're feeling like you're not as competent as others perceive you to be, that, my dear, is a red flag. And that means you are struggling or you have symptoms of imposter syndrome. Yes. Another one would be that when you're feeling anxious or stressed about making mistakes or not meeting expectations. In this case, you might avoid taking on challenges or pursuing opportunities because you are afraid, my dear, because you're afraid of failing or being exposed as a fraud. Yes, this one is fear of failure. That is a sign or symptoms that you are struggling with imposter syndrome. I mean, this rings a bell because just a few days ago, a similar story to what I shared before, something like that came up recently and I was panicking. Guys, I was, funny how I already know what it is, right? I know what I'm feeling, but then I couldn't just help but just panic. I was just shaking, right? But not serious, intense shaking, but I was just panicking. And my guy was like, can you breathe? Can you breathe, this woman? But I became calm later on and I did what I was supposed to do, all right? So another sign or symptom that you are struggling with imposter syndrome will be that you are downplaying or minimizing your achievement. So even when people acknowledge them or they give you the accolade, you just feel like you're just winging it and nothing special is happening, right? My dear, that can be a red flag as well, right? It just means that you're underestimating your own abilities, which is not healthy, right? And another case would be when you set lower goals or avoid challenges or taking risks or going for the big things that you desire, even when you know that that's what you truly desire, but you just feel like, no, let me just stay here, let me not do too much, let me not, go for the things I want to go just because I feel like I can't do it. That is a sign or a red flag, my dear. Another major one will be that you always feel you need to be flawless in everything you do. That is, you suffer from perfectionism, which is also in tandem with imposter syndrome, right? In this case, you may never feel satisfied with any of your accomplishments. You may feel like, even when you do something great, you may feel like, it could have been better. That is different from self-assessment. It's different from, wanting to do better. But in this case, nothing just satisfies you. I mean, nothing looks good to you. Nothing makes sense to you, if that's the better word for it. Do you get me? And lastly, when you're always criticizing yourself, actually, for mistakes, right? This would also affect your confidence and your self-esteem, which, builds imposter syndrome. So I want you to be aware that if you're experiencing one or more of these signs, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have imposter syndrome. But if you consistently struggle with these feelings and they interfere with your ability to achieve your goals, then it is most likely that you, my dear, you need help. All right. And I remember that I mentioned that I'm still walking myself through it. And here is what I've decided to do to help myself. You might need to listen actively because this is where the solution comes in. And I don't repeat myself. Okay. Thank you. So one thing I've decided to do is, recognizing the fact that I am not the only one struggling with imposter syndrome. That feeling of we plenty for the air, it just made me feel less crazy, really. That feeling that, okay, I am not as bad as I think I am, and it is something that it can be worked on. Just made it look fine. So if you can recognize it yourself, make it known to you that you are struggling with this thing and there are ways it can be worked on. I'm sure you are one step closer to overcoming imposter syndrome. Also, I have now decided to pay attention to the situations or thoughts that triggers imposter feeling. So for instance, do I feel this way when I'm faced with new challenge or when I receive praise? I think when I ask myself those questions, it helped me to relax and respond better. So it can as well help you. And the third thing I've decided to do is to challenge negative thoughts, and I should be brave enough to push for anything regardless of how I feel, because now I know better that what I feel is just imposter syndrome and I am the boss of it. I mean, imposter syndrome got nothing on me. Darn. Okay. So one other thing I'm working on is shifting my mindset from fearing failure to seeing it as an opportunity, right? I'm just programming my mind to be able to receive failure as an opportunity and not take it so hard on myself. I'm trying to be patient and kind with myself as well. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? I get a no or get rejected, or I still get to leave and we move. Nothing spoils. So that's one thing working on. I think there's one I did not mention, and that is sharing my experience to a close and trusted friend or relative. I express how I feel. It was because that my guy knows how I was feeling. That was how they were able to come through for me by telling me to breathe, relax, nothing is happening, just do this thing and get over it, right? So yes, with that, my dear, we've come to the end of today's episode, and I hope I've been able to convince you that you should not leave the chance to imposter syndrome this year at all. No grief for imposter syndrome. Please remember that overcoming imposter syndrome is a process, okay? And it's okay to seek help and support along the way. Also, be patient with yourself. It's very important that you're patient with yourself, and you know that with time and effort, you'll be able to learn to manage and build your confidence. All right. Also, remember our theme for 2024 is Level Up 2024 with the hashtag Level Up 2024, hashtag Level Up with Lumii, hashtag Lumii Tribe. Until next time, beautiful people, stay awesome and keep leveling up. Goodbye.